Today we're going to be looking at Shrine in the color Aqua. So first thing you may notice is that my swatches are labeled 1 through 12. I do just want to say quickly that is not synonymous with hair levels. I basically just number the swatches to keep track of them throughout the video. 1 is pink, 2 is a gray, 3 is a medium toned natural red, 4 is like a soft black, and then 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then 12 is like a toned version of number 11. So the concept for this is a little bit different than what I'm used to. So they basically give you a little silicone bowl. On the inside there's a line. You fill it with conditioner to that line. And then on the box there's a chart, so you look at roughly where your hair color probably is, whether it's bleached blonde, dark blonde, light brown, what color you would want, and how many drops of the actual dye it would take to achieve that color. You put it in the conditioner and you mix it, and that's what you apply to your hair. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, I will say this does use sort of a lot of conditioner, and if you're applying this on your whole head, that's totally fine. But since I'm just doing it on my swatches, I tried to figure out the ratio of drops to conditioner, and then I tried to make it as small as possible so that I could do it without using the bowl and still have a similar result. So that is what I did. I'll tell you guys the ratios that I used as I'm applying them, but they will be equivalent to the 30 drop section and the 6 drop section. So my darker one will be equivalent to the 30s, and then the lighter one will be equivalent to the 6 drops. So starting with the darker mix, which is what I usually like to do on top, again, it would be the full bowl of conditioner with 30 drops normally, but I was kind of able to almost half it, So it is a 16 to 15 ratio, so that is 16 parts of the conditioner to 15 drops of the dye. And the dye is a very gel-like consistency, so when you're doing the drops, it probably won't be exact every time either. Some of my drops were a little bit bigger, some were a little bit smaller. Also, just remember, everyone's hair is different, so everyone's hair will take color differently, plus the products you use even can affect how dye will take to your hair. So please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you.
Nothing about you makes me nervous. I feel right at home.
For the second ratio, again, it is supposed to be about the bowl amount of conditioner with the 6 drops, but for me it's going to be a 16 to 3 ratio. So that'll be 16 parts of the conditioner to 3 drops of the dye. Another thing I wanted to point out is that it's supposed to actually be more of a tint. It says right on the front of the box that it will last 3 to 12 washes. It also recommends putting it over damp hair, but then when I looked into the directions, it said if you have dark hair to just put it on dry hair, which is why I decided to just do all of these with dry hair as well so we can see what would happen. And I'm not totally sure how the color is picking up on camera, but straight out of the container, the dye definitely had a like aqua-y greenish color, but when I mixed it with the conditioner, it turned into like a light blue. So we'll see how that takes. It also recommends letting it sit for 10 minutes. I don't know if they're expecting you to be using this in the shower or not, but I think I'm gonna do a 30 minutes instead. Normally I like to do like hours, but if they are intending that you use this in the shower, I also want to be a little bit more realistic with that. So I think 30 minutes is a good happy medium. It also recommends rinsing it with warm water, which is a little different than I'm used to, so I will be doing that. When it is dry, I will meet you back here and we could do some comparisons. So I want to just give a quick reminder again that my swatches are not virgin hair. Virgin hair tends to be less porous, so it can sometimes struggle to absorb color and hold on to color. So how my swatches turn out is not a perfect indication of how your hair can turn out, especially if it's darker. So overall, I am a little bit surprised at the color. When I was mixing it in the conditioner turned really blue, so I was already like a little concerned. But it definitely turned out a lot more turquoise than the dye looked in the conditioner. But compared to the box, it is a lot more blue. And I don't know if this is because they kind of intend your hair to be more yellow, which would make it look more green. So if you are someone whose hair turns more yellow, that is an expectation that you could maybe assume that you might have. And I mean, over the slightly darker swatches, like 7 through 10, it is pretty green in comparison to like the platinum blonde. So even though this did turn out different for me, I do think they made a good choice of making it more green on the box just in case. So let's start with number 1. That one was originally pink. I don't think both the top and the bottom were necessarily covered perfectly. Obviously the top covered much better, but I do still see a lot of pink coming through. And then the bottom having less pigment obviously looks even more pink. And the overall color, I would say, is kind of a very cool toned muted blue. It almost leans purple. It probably just depends on the lighting, but I think I see a little bit more blue. Maybe that's an illusion. I'm not sure. 2 was the gray. I think a lot of these are going to have a similar outcome where the top covers obviously more than the bottom did. So I still see some gray coming through on the bottom, whereas the top part looks pretty saturated. But because the gray obviously is gray, the outcome is more muted, I would say, and darker. Usually cool tones don't reflect light as well as warm tones, so that could explain why it does look a little bit darker over the gray. I'm going to lump 3 in with 6 and 7. More so 6, but they kind of have a similar outcome. So the top half definitely changed the swatch. It doesn't look how it did before, but I would say it's mostly an undertone change where it still kind of has that brownish natural look, just a lot more cool toned than it was before. And then the bottom, there probably is a difference, but it's not huge. I would have to assume it's the same concept where it's just an undertone difference where it probably cooled it down a little bit, but compared to the more pigmented version of the dye, it's really hard to see a difference from how the swatch looked before on the bottom half. Number 4 was black. I don't see a difference on that one. 5, again, same concept. The top and the bottom of the swatch both look brown, but the top looks a little bit darker, like there was an undertone shift for that as well. I do see a little bit of green coming through on that. So when I say cool tone, I mean in a slightly more ashy way. Sometimes cool tone can mean like a bluish undertone, but in this case it's more greenish ashy, which applies for the 3 and the 6 as well, from what I was talking about a couple of seconds ago. And then back to like 7, 8, 9, and 10. They basically just get lighter as the swatches get lighter, but overall the dye on top of these swatches has a very seafoamy kind of green look. And you lose that greenness with the number 11 Platinum Blonde, but my swatch wasn't as yellow as some people's hair might be. I think for the less pigmented version of the dye, my favorite would be number 11 as well because it looks the most intentional. It did actually take on number 10 as well, but even on number 10, I would have to say I like the more pigmented version a little bit more, again, because it looks more intentional. And then jumping over to number 12, that one also took pretty well, but because it became a little bit more muted with it being toned, it also looks a little bit darker. And on the less pigmented half of the swatch, it does actually pull a little bit more green, and I'm assuming that could be just an undertone thing or just how the hair took the color, I guess. When I was looking for comparisons for this dye, I realized just how few of this color I've done on my channel. So I think we're going to do one comparison that is less similar and then one comparison that is more similar. So the less similar comparison I wanted to look at today is Good Dye Young in the color Wondermint. This is comparable to number 12. $11, 10, and 9. It's interesting because compared to the Shrine Aqua, I feel like the Wondermint looks really dark, but when you put Wondermint up to other greenish colors, it looks maybe not pastel, but definitely a lot lighter. So that tells me that the Aqua is also very pastel. And even though most dyes do recommend using their dye over platinum blonde hair, pastels are especially going to be sticking to that. I think Wondermint is a really good name for the dye because it definitely leans a little bit more green, which to me is more minty, whereas the Aqua definitely leans a little bit more blue. And I already mentioned previously that the Aqua is supposed to be a tint, so it's not actually meant to be super, super pigmented, but you can kind of see over 9 and 10 that the Wondermint, especially over the direct eye portion, is probably a little bit better if you have darker hair because it is a little bit more pigmented. And then my other comparison I wanted to look at that is a little bit more similar is Lunar Tides in the color Sea Witch. This is comparable to number 12, 11, 10, and 9. All right, so as far as undertones go, I think these are pretty similar in my opinion. The Sea Witch might lean just a tiny bit more green, just a touch though. The biggest difference I'm personally seeing is that the Sea Witch seems to be more saturated. So the Aqua is a tiny bit softer, a little bit dustier, where the Sea Witch is a little bit brighter. I don't know if number 10 is a perfect comparison because I've noticed that the number 10 swatches that I've been using just come straight from the package a little bit darker than they used to. But the number 9, they look pretty similar. Now again, because these are pastels, I don't know if I personally recommend them over even like medium blonde hair, but because the Shrine again is a tint, I would still recommend that for lighter hair, and something like the Sea Witch might be a little bit better for slightly darker hair. Obviously, do a strand test. I'm not sure if it's the saturation that makes the Sea Witch look a little bit more green, because I know once you add a tiny bit of dustiness to any color, it automatically makes it look a little bit more cool toned. But regardless, that doesn't change the fact that I do, again, see a little bit more green in the Sea Witch, and I think it's a little bit more obvious on the diluted section, but I can see it pretty clearly over the number 9 as well. All right. Now I'd like to look at the before and after clips. Those, as well as anything past this point in the video, is all going to be done in natural lighting.
I think I'm gonna go to sleep again and wake up alone on the floor, 'cause I feel haunted in my bedroom. The floorboards in the next room will keep me warm. 'Cause you ought to know nothing about you makes me nervous. I feel right at home. 'Cause you ought to know nothing about you makes me anxious. I never feel alone. I never feel alone. I think I overstayed my welcome, but I think you want me to stick around, to bring you coffee or a cigarette. I don't think we're done yet, not for now. 'Cause you ought to know nothing about you makes me nervous.
I hope my video helped. This is the first time I'm doing this brand on my channel, so if anybody has done this on their hair before, feel free to let us know what that was like, how fast it washed out for you, what kind of color you put the dye over, all that jazz. Definitely helpful. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so very much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.